Hello, welcome to the Comic Book Commentary. I'm Bo Leidig, and last week, after making my video on Cyberforce number 1, I remembered that there's more than one mutant superhero team that I had been talking about, and it's been almost a year since I brought them up. So this week we're going to change that by looking at Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 5 from IDW. So let's zoom in and take a closer look. First published in December of 2011, we see here on the front cover, which is cover B, by the way, there are 3 covers to this issue, that while it does feature Splinter front and center right in the middle, that the rest of the issue is just kind of a lot of panels and monochrome colors, and in all honesty, I don't find this cover to be all that interesting or eye-catching, which is really unfortunate because the story that happens in this issue is insanely interesting and completely flips the script on every bit of Turtles lore that had existed up until this point, which makes this one of the most important issues in this series, which we're going to find out once we get inside. Story: Kevin Eastman and Tom Waltz. Script: Tom Waltz. Art: Dan Duncan for the New York City portions of the story. And Mateus Santaluco, I think is how you say that. If I'm saying it wrong, I apologize. He actually draws all the portions of this story that take place in feudal Japan. Colors: Rhonda Pattinson. Letters: Sean Lee. Editor: Bobby Curnow. The story begins in New York City, where we see Splinter perched high atop a building looking down on some thugs who are trying to capture him. These men have been hired by Old Hob, and they are doing their best to locate Splinter. However, they're not well aware of what's going on, and they don't realize that Splinter's actually the one hunting down them, as we see Splinter grab one of the men from behind, choke him out, and stash his body in an alleyway, as he thinks that this feels eerily familiar, that this is like an instance in his life that he's already lived, and that he's just going through the motions for the second time. We then get a glimpse into the memories that Splinter was thinking of, as we are teleported to feudal Japan and see a ninja peering down into an alleyway. However, this takes his attention away from the rooftop he stands upon, and he misses the man sneaking up behind him, the very man he was pursuing, as he slits the ninja's throat. He then sets the ninja down on the rooftop and peers over the side to see other ninjas who are pursuing him. We're then teleported back to the present day in the sewers of New York City, where we see that Raphael is training with the other 3 turtles. After they've been reunited, he's trying to get his skills on par with theirs. So he says, "Hey, what are you chumps waiting for?" Immediately, Michelangelo and Leonardo launch their attack. Mikey tries to punch him, however, Raph catches it and then immediately hits him with an uppercut. Leonardo grabs Raph in a full Nelson, however, Raph is easily able to counter this and throws Leonardo over his shoulders and slams him on the ground. He then looks at Donnie and says, "You want some?" However, Donnie just smiles and says, "Color me impressed, bro, that was pretty good." Mikey concurs with Donatello as he says, "Yeah, man, I think you just knocked all the enamel off my teeth." And then Leonardo interjects by stating, "You know, Raph, it's pretty impressive how far you've come in just a month since you've been reunited with us." Now, this is important because that means that this issue is taking place exactly 1 month after the previous issue. Raph looks down at his hands and says, "You know, it's funny, it's almost like I already knew how to do all this stuff and I'm just like brushing up on it." He then looks up at his brothers and says, "I bet that sounds pretty weird, huh?" However, Leonardo states, "You know, it would, except we all kind of experienced the same thing. Like, we're all just fine-tuning skills we already knew." And then Mikey says, "Yeah, but it seems like Master's got us fine-tuning those skills from dusk till dawn." Leonardo kind of chastises him lightly and states to him, "Well, I mean, you know, Mikey, you spend just as much time feeding your face and reading comic books as you do training, so I don't think you really have anything to complain about." Raph then states that, you know, he's not really that upset about all the training, but he is kind of wondering when exactly he's going to get his chance to get his own set of weapons like the other turtles have. However, Donatello tells him, "Well, you know, I wouldn't worry about it. Honestly, we didn't know he was even going to give us any weapons, and then suddenly after like 4 months of training, boom, out of the blue, here you go." And then Raph thinks to himself, "You know what, speaking of Master Splinter, where exactly is he?" We then see Splinter in the alleyways as he's still trying to make his way home past all of Old Hobbs' henchmen. He looks at two of them as they complain about the cold, and he thinks to himself that this is an opportunity for him, that their focus on how cold it is making them disillusioned and not very observant about their surroundings. So he grabs an old soda can and then throws it down the alleyway. This, of course, grabs both of their attention as they run down the alleyway after the noise, and Splinter uses this opportunity to climb up a nearby fire escape. We're then teleported back to feudal Japan, where we learn that the man who's being hunted is actually Hamato Yoshi, and that he has now been listed as the sworn enemy of the Foot Clan, as we see the Foot Ninjas dispersing around the city trying to hunt him down. He quickly takes out another one of the ninjas and does his best to maintain a low profile as he tries desperately to get home and see his sons once again. We learn through a flashback within a flashback that Hamato Yoshi became the enemy of the Foot Clan when the Foot Clan's leader, Oroku Saki, decided that when they were paid to assassinate a feudal lord, that he was actually going to assassinate the entire village around the castle as well. This did not sit well at all with Hamato Yoshi, as he states, "This is crazy, we were only supposed to assassinate the lord. Why would we kill all these innocents?" Oroku Saki tells him, well, because this will assert our dominance as the preeminent ninja clan, and it will show everyone just how ruthless and cunning we can be. However, Hamato Yoshi stands up to Oroku Saki and tells him that he will not be part of wholesale slaughter, and that Oroku Saki's actions do nothing but bring dishonor to the Foot Clan. He then turns his back and leaves, stating that he will not partake in such a thing. Unfortunately for him, Oroku Saki takes this as a massive insult to himself and also the Foot Clan, and decides at this point that Hamato Yoshi's actions will not be tolerated. Unfortunately for Hamato Yoshi, Oroku Saki decides that it's not good enough simply to just execute him. He's going to execute his entire family as well, as we see two foot ninjas slowly approaching a home in the night. Inside of this home is Hamato Yoshi's wife, Tang Shen, and his 4 sons, who she has just put down to sleep. She closes the door to their bedroom and turns to go into the rest of the house, and at this moment, the 2 ninjas burst through the door. She immediately realizes the danger and begs them not to hurt her sons. However, they respond by cutting her down. As we see her on the ground, one of the ninjas states, "Now we must take out the children as well." However, before this can transpire, Hamato Yoshi returns home, and upon seeing his beloved wife lying on the floor in a pool of blood, he becomes blinded by rage and simply screams out, "Devils, what have you done?" as he draws both of his swords. The ninjas, however, do not seem to be that afraid of Yoshi, as one of them screams out, "There's the traitor, let's kill him." They charge toward Yoshi, however, they are no match for his skill, as he easily disperses both of the ninjas and ends their lives. At this point, he turns over to see his wife leaning up off the floor, trying to reach towards him, as she states, "Yoshi, please." He runs to her side and says, "You live." However, she exclaims, "But not for long," and with her dying breath, she makes one final request of her beloved husband, asking him to please, instead of going after the Foot Clan seeking vengeance, to instead take their boys and go into hiding and make sure that they survive, to protect them and keep them out of harm's way, because the Foot Clan will surely return to try and finish the job. Before Yoshi can protest, his wife goes limp in his arms, and he realizes that she's now gone, so he simply kisses her on the forehead and honors her final request by getting up and getting his boys. As Yoshi lays his wife's body down on the floor, he tells his sons that Oroku Saki deserves to die for the atrocities that he's committed today, but unfortunately, today is not when he will pay for those atrocities. He then tells his sons that today he will in fact honor his wife's final wish and make sure that he escapes to safety with all 4 of their sons. As he gathers the boys together, though, he tells them that while today Oroku Saki will not pay for this crime, that one day in the future he will make sure that justice is served, as he looks back one more time on his home and escapes into the night, realizing that the life he had led up until this point is over and a new life is beginning with his 4 sons on the run. We are then teleported back to the 21st century in New York City, specifically New York Tech College Hockey Arena, where we see Casey Jones having a discussion with his hockey coach. His coach tells him that, for a long time he was really doing very well in school, but in the past half semester, his grades have really plummeted, and if he can't get these up by the end of the semester, that his coach is going to have no choice but to cut him from the team. Casey tells him that, he just struggles with the material and that it just doesn't come natural to him the way that skating around and cracking skulls does. His coach, though, tells him, well, I understand, but you can't do one without the other, not in college hockey. He then tells Casey that he should probably work on trying to get a tutor and see if he can get some help with his studies. He then tells him that his folks could probably help him out with any of the problems that he's having as well if he asks. And Casey says, yeah, my folks, sure, I'll talk to him. However, Casey's coach is obviously not aware of the fact that his mother is deceased and his father is an abusive alcoholic, as we see Casey looking pretty depressed given the situation of his home life and now realizing that one of the things that gives him the greatest joy in life might be taken away from him due to the struggles that he has in his own personal life. We are then teleported to some New York Tech dormitories where we see April O'Neil and her friend Trish. Trish is trying to hurry April, telling her that they're going to miss their carpool back to upstate New York and that she needs to get her butt in gear. April tells her that she just has one last thing to hang on the bulletin board before they leave. Trish kind of scolds her, stating, how can you still be thinking about studying at a time like this? However, we see that the piece of paper April hung up is actually an advertisement. She is actually advertising her services as a tutor to anyone who can teach her self-defense lessons and has a bunch of little tags with her phone number attached. April tells her that it's not so much of the studying she's worried about, but her own personal safety. However, Trish tells her that they don't have time to worry about this right now because if they don't get their butts in that car, it's going to leave without them. We see the two of them leave as Casey walks in behind them, and April tells Trish, look, I'm, well aware of everything that's going on, but I just want to make sure that somebody answers this ad because I really want to get these lessons. Trish tells her that it's way too cold to worry about that right now, though. We're then teleported back to the alleyways where we see Splinter lying in wait behind some trash cans as one of Hobbs' men wielding a crowbar slowly approaches. At the last moment, Splinter jumps out and smacks him with his cane straight in the gut and quickly disperses of the man, leaving him lying on the ground. We then see Splinter remove a manhole cover and crawl back into the sewer, leaving all of Hobbs' men none the wiser as to where he just went. We're once again teleported back to feudal Japan, where we see Hamato Yoshi returning home to his 4 sons. They have aged a bit since the last time we saw them, and they're all wearing familiar colors and wielding familiar-looking weapons. They're all excited to see their father upon his return, and he gives them sweets and food that he acquired for them. They all have reactions very similar to that of the Ninja Turtles that we all know and love, as they thank their father for everything that he's brought to them. He tells them to eat, that this is all for them. However, he is interrupted when a familiar voice says, no, Yoshi, this is all for you, as we see that they have been ambushed by none other than Orokusaki and the Foot Clan. Hamato Yoshi turns and simply says Orokusaki as he realizes that he and his sons have been found out and that this does not bode well for them. They are immediately captured, and he and his sons are bound and put on the ground as we see 4 ninjas preparing to execute his sons in front of him. Mockingly, Orokusaki says, look at what you've done. You've dragged your sons into this. They're all going to die here today with you because of your treachery and the way that you betrayed the Foot Clan. Yoshi looks up at his boys and simply says, my sons, please forgive me, as we see them all share a glance with their father for the last time. Or so they all think. Because as all this is happening, Yoshi is praying to Buddha and anyone who could possibly help him that he will one day be reunited with his sons and also have a chance to face off against Orokusaki one-on-one, warrior to warrior. Saki then gives the order and all 4 of the ninjas immediately execute Yoshi's sons. Then he turns and draws his own sword, telling Yoshi that it is now his time to die. However, Yoshi remains defiant and tells Orokusaki that for 11 seasons he has avoided confrontation with the Foot Clan as he felt himself bound to the promise he made to his wife in her final request. and that he has done everything to try and keep his sons safe, but now they're dead, and the promise he made to his wife has been fulfilled, and that he will do everything in his power to make sure that when they meet again, he will destroy Oroku Saki. However, Saki mockingly states, "Fool, we will never meet again," as he brings his sword down in a single swipe and ends Yoshi's life. However, the tale does not end here, as there is one of new hope brewing in the present day in New York City, as we see Splinter return to the lair that he shares with the Turtles. He tells the four that he has gifts for all of them, as he puts his sack on the table and starts to pull out all of the things that he has brought for each one of his boys. He tells each one of them that he had them wearing red bandanas because this was the favorite color of their brother Raphael, and he wanted to make sure that every time they saw themselves in these bandanas that they were reminded of what their task at hand was, that they were searching out their lost brother, trying to bring him back to their family. But now that they've all been reunited, he wants to give each one of them their own favorite color to wear as their bandana, as we see him individually present Mikey with orange, Donatello with purple, and Leonardo with blue, stating, "Now, my sons, we are one, united in a single family, but we are also individuals, and we can live and work as a group, but also remain true to ourselves." Splinter then says, "Well, what are you guys waiting for? Go ahead and try them on." As the three turtles put on their new bandanas, Splinter reaches into his pack once again and tells Raphael that he has something special for him too, that he's very impressed and overjoyed with how fast his skills have progressed in the short time they've been reunited, as he hands him his own pair of weapons, which are, of course, sais. Raphael is stunned and overjoyed by this, as earlier in the book, he was, wondering when exactly he was ever going to get a chance to get his own weapons. However, Splinter pats him on the back and says, "You've earned these, but keep in mind, we are on a quest for peace, and that we should never use these weapons out of anger, only in the last resort defense of ourselves and others." Raphael tells him that he'll remember these principles always, as Michelangelo comes up and pats him on the back and states, "Wow, bro, check it out, you got exactly what you wanted." Leonardo then approaches Splinter and states, "Well, Father, we're very appreciative of these gifts you've brought us, but I'm sad because we don't have anything for you." However, Splinter looks at his son and states, "Well, I understand that you wanted to get me something, but the reality is my sons were taken from me, and now we are all reunited. And to be reunited with one's family, well," and then we see an image of Casey Jones standing above his mother's grave after lying a single rose on it, stating, "I miss you, Mom." And another image of April running into her parents' house, grabbing her mother, giving her a big hug, and telling her, "I'm so happy to be home, Mom." And then we see Splinter looking at the four turtles again, stating, "Well, that's the greatest gift of all, isn't it? Being reunited with your family." And then this kind of puts a highlight on exactly how depressing Casey's life really is, man. I mean, if it weren't bad enough that his mother has died of cancer and he's, barely 20 years old, his father is a raging alcoholic who just mercilessly beats him all the time. I mean, it's a rough life for Casey Jones, man. At this point, Donatello perks up and tells Splinter, "Father, there is one question I have. How exactly did you know that red was Raphael's favorite color?" Splinter looks upon his sons and states, "That's a good question, and it's one that I need to answer, along with a whole host of other questions that I'm sure the four of you are going to have, because I've been keeping a lot of things from you, and it's a lot of things you all deserve to know. So come sit with me, because I have the most amazing tale to tell you." As he sits down with his four sons on Christmas Eve, we see the other three bandanas that the other three turtles were wearing are now hung over the end table along with the tree, as we reach the end of the story and the beginning, honestly, of this new Turtles tale. Yes, there were 4 issues before that and they all mattered, but this is where the series really pops off in a completely unique direction from all other Turtles lore. We then get a sneak peek at the cover for issue number 6. It looks pretty cool. We then get to the Ninja Notes. This is, of course, where readers can submit letters to be responded to by the team working on this book and hope that they get published. One reader actually submitted some photos of a tattoo that he got of the 4 covers for issue number 1 that depicted the 4 turtles jumping through a pipe in the sewer as it is tattooed around his entire calf. He tells them that he's going to give them updates as he gets the money and time to get it all filled in with color. But to be honest, the guys on the Turtles team are really impressed that he went to the trouble of getting all of that tattooed on his leg and are pretty enthusiastic that he would be this into the Turtles and this new series. And to be honest, most of the letters are this kind of stuff where it's just like, oh man, you guys are so great. Everything here is super cool. But there was one letter that had a pretty interesting question that we're going to talk about on the next page. On the next page, we get some behind the scenes artwork and a look at the Michelangelo micro series cover. I've got to actually get into the micro series issues. I'll probably do a video on Leonardo's next month. I probably should have already done it before I did this one, but it's not going to be that big a deal. And then also some storyboard action right here. That's pretty cool. Now, the letter in question was someone writing in wondering how exactly the turtles grew teeth when they mutated. And Kevin Eastman actually gave a pretty good explanation as he told them that this is just all part of the mutation that brings them from animal to humanoid anthropomorphic animal form. Because he was like, you know, they didn't have hands or feet either. They had flippers, which have now morphed into hands and feet. And they also got articulated elbows. Their bodies as a whole changed, not just their mouths. So the idea that they would grow teeth isn't really that outlandish given all the other changes that happened to their bodies, which, to be fair, is a decent point that he's making. And I got to give Eastman some credit on coming up with that. We then get an advertisement for Magic the Gathering comic books. I have not read any of those, and I've also never played Magic the Gathering. Now, keep in mind, I have nothing against the game. I don't know really that much about it. I'm just not really that into collectible card games so much as I am like really nerdy strategy board games. And being that my funds are limited to, you know, an extent, I kind of have to stick in one lane or the other, so I chose the nerdy strategy board game lane. And speaking of the Turtles micro series, once again, we get a full page ad this time of the Michelangelo micro series. As I stated before, I'm probably going to do a video on Leonardo's issue next month, so stay tuned for that. And then on the reverse inside cover, we get an ad for John Romita's The Amazing Spider-Man Artist Edition. I'm really surprised that this was published by IDW. I really don't know why Marvel would not have just published this hardback book on their own and gone through a completely separate publisher, but they decided to do it, and I doubt very seriously that IDW had any problems taking money from a major company like Marvel, so I'm assuming it was beneficial to both of them, but who knows? And by the way, if you happen to have purchased this book and have anything that you want to talk about in pertaining to how good it was, feel free to do so in the comments below. I'm actually curious because I don't remember ever seeing this before. So I'd like to know what was going on with it and, you know, if it was any good and if you felt it was worth the money. And that was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 5. And this, in my opinion, is a fantastic book. This is without a doubt the jumping off point for the IDW Turtles series. The issue that really just flips the script on everything that we had known before about the Turtles, where Hamato Yoshi was a man who had been near a rat when he got in contact with the mutagen, so it turned him into a rat. But the Turtles had been in contact with Yoshi, so they turned into humanoid form. No, in this story, Splinter and the Turtles are the reincarnated spirits of Hamato Yoshi and his 4 sons from feudal Japan, which is a super cool idea. If I'm being quite honest, it's something that I would have never thought of to do. And the idea that Waltz and Eastman came up with this really speaks volumes to how much they cared about trying to not just rehash the same old story, but to really put a fresh coat of paint on the whole thing. And, you know, spoiler alert, they do a pretty great job with it. I like this series for a reason, and that reason is because the storytelling in it is genuinely pretty good most of the time. There's so many new angles that they have for characters and so many ways that they integrate old pieces of turtle lore, whether it be comic books or cartoons or movies or toy lines. And it's just, oh, and video games, story points get brought up at, specific plot points in different issues. It's so well done. And it's amazing that they were able to take so many different pieces of Turtles lore that, seemingly should never have been connected to one another, and then somehow manage to integrate it all in a way that, in my opinion, is damn near flawless. But then again, this is in fact just my opinion. Your opinion may be completely different. You may not like this new idea of Hamato Yoshi and his sons being reincarnated in the future. And you might have questions about exactly how on earth Oroku Saki plays into this and what's going to go on with him and what's up with old Hob. And there's a lot of questions here that maybe you're thinking don't make sense, and you would have preferred that it all just kind of stayed the way that it was before. And if that's the case, it's okay, because everyone's entitled to their own opinion. If you enjoyed today's video, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And thanks for stopping by. Have a great day.